Alright, good morning. This is a video for our linear regression project that you're going to be doing for your take-home. So basically in this video what I want to do is just show you how you pick a topic of interest, right? Grab two variables probably related to your topic, collect that data, okay, copy and paste the website that you obtained it from, and then we're going to put that data in an Excel spreadsheet, okay, and analyze it with a line of best fit, including the equation and the R value of the graph. And then we're going to interpret the meaning of each of those in a complete sentence, which is the slope and the y-intercept and the R value, right? So each of those is going to get one of those model sentences. And then we're just going to write a paragraph or two explaining the association between the variables and then what might be part of the response, right? That's not included. Now remember, your R squared value tells you what percentage of the response is explained by the explanatory variable. Well, if it's not 100%, then something else is also influencing the response, and so you just want to think about those things, okay? So basically what I am going to do for my topic of interest is something a student did 2 semesters ago, and I'm interested in The Walking Dead, okay? And so 2 variables that may be related to my topic are the viewers of The Walking Dead show, and then of course the sales of the Walking Dead comics, right? So now I need to collect data on my topic. So basically all I did was I Googled Walking Dead TV viewers. And as you can see, I went to a couple of the different sites, but I skipped Wikipedia at first. But it turns out that if you click on Wikipedia, okay, the show premiered in October 31st, 2010. This is going to be pretty important to us as we go forward and collect the data. So it looks like October of 2010 to October 2014 is what we're looking at, okay? And so then I'm going to go down, and you can notice there's ratings here at the bottom. So I'm going to click on ratings, and I'm going to go down here, right? So it has all of these ratings things, and I'm looking at this, and you may end up with this kind of data too. We've got each episode number is out here for each of the seasons, and you've got all of this data, and you may need to make a decision, right, as to how you want to organize this. So my thought was what I would do is I would just look at episode number 1, which aired in October for each of the 5 seasons. So instead of trying to look at all of this data, which I could actually go in episode by episode and look at comic book sales in those exact months for that particular show. But I think what's easier and probably is beneficial for the project is if you just cut it down and say, hey, look, I'm just going to look at season 1 and the episode 1 of each of the seasons, right? So basically I'm going to grab this table right here and copy it, and then I'm going to go over to Excel, and I'm going to paste that here, all right? And so I don't really care about the source formatting, and so now I'm going to get rid of everything else, just delete it. And so now I have the each season, and then this is really just the viewers. This is the rating here. Okay? So season 1 premieres rating, season 2 premieres rating, season 3 premieres rating, season 4. Now, you'll remember this is October of 2010, right? And so these are 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I'm just going to look at October of 2010 to October of 2014 for my comic book ratings, right? So basically what I did was I typed in The Walking Dead comic book sales, and here I've got comic book sales figures from January. That seems good. So I'm going to click on it, and it's got January. I don't really want January. What I really want is October, right? So I scroll down to the bottom because a lot of times at the bottom of a page you can have year overview, to the future, to the past, right? So I just clicked on year overview, and oh, look here, I've got comic book sales for 2014, and I can find October, right? You'll notice that The Walking Dead is already there, and that's because it was pretty popular. Okay, so I've got one issue, issue 132, and it sold 326,334 comics, right? So basically, I'm just gonna copy that. I just want this number right here. Just this number. Copy. And then I'm just going to go over to my Excel spreadsheet, and for 2014 I'm going to paste that number in, and then this is going to be my comics sales, right? Now I actually need to find all of the other years too. Now again, if you actually do like a control F and you look for Walking Dead, what will happen is you're going to get 3 of 21. So I've got one here, and one here on this list. So it turns out that issue 132 and 133 were sold in October. But again, I really just want to look at the big number, right? This is probably came out toward the end of the month and probably doesn't correspond with the show's premiere. This one probably does. And so again, just like I left out the other episodes, I'm going to leave out this issue. I'm only going to want to look at this issue right here. Okay? But now I need to look at October of all the other years, right? So if you'll remember, there was a go to the past at the bottom of the list. And probably what I want to do, is, wait, maybe there's like a by year. See, I'm doing this just like you would be doing it. I'm searching right now. Let's see, year overview. There's 2014. And then let's see, to the past. Oh, here we go, 2013. Right, so I'm just going to look at October of 2013. And again, you'll notice there's The Walking Dead right there. And that's because it's super popular in the month that it comes out. Now you'll notice that it's less sales, which is good, right? Because this means that it's actually been increasing over time. So here's 2013. I'm going to put that in there. And now I'm going to pause it and I'm going to find the other 3, and then we're going to come back to the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I went in and I got all of my comic book numbers. And as you can see, it goes up. And there's a pretty significant jump from Season 2 to Season 3. And then there's another significant jump from Season 3 to Season 4. And then, of course, we still see some growth in Season 5. Since Season 3, The Walking Dead comic book has actually become a top 10 comic book for sales over the year. And I'm going to explain why in just a minute, right? But let's just look at our data. All right. Now what we need to do is we need a chart. Okay. We need to be able to chart this data. So probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this right here, and I'm going to just select the data. All right. Including the rating and the comics with each of these. Okay. Data involved. So I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to select the rating column and the comics column for this. Now what I need to do is I need to insert this in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the screen just a little bit. Alright, boom. So I moved the screen just a little bit so that you can see the insert button up at the top, right? So I'm going to hit insert. And you'll have to bear with me as my computer can be a little slow. Maybe I just didn't click it. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to insert a scatter plot. Okay. Now you may have recommended a chart. You can do that one too, okay? But we just want to scatter plot, and so I'm going to hit scatter, and then not with the lines connected because I want to put a trend line in, right? I want to do a linear regression. And so I'm just going to hit this guy right here, scatter with markers only. You'll notice there it is, and I'm going to pull it up over here and make it nice and big so that we can see it, right? And so here is our comic. Here's the ratings compared to the comic books. Okay, so yours may be a little bit different, but in the chart design, right, there's actually a layout. And if you look at layout, hopefully with your chart tools, with your layout, there is something that has an axis with titles. And then what you want to do is your primary horizontal axis, you want to display it below. And then, of course, your primary vertical axis, you want to display it vertically like this, right? And so this then becomes our sales of comics. And then this one down here becomes our show viewership. Okay, so we've got that right there. Now, once we have that, now I want to format my title, right? So this is really I'm comparing the Walking Dead comic sales to the show viewers. So that's kind of a nice title right there. Now you can see I've got this data. And now what I want to do is I actually want to insert the trend line into this data. I'm going to click on it, alright, so that the data is highlighted. And then I right click. And you'll notice there's an add a trend line, right? So I'm going to click on add a trend line. And up it pops. And it's going to default to linear. Okay, and so at the very bottom what I want to do is I want to display the equation on the chart and display the r squared value on the chart. Alright, and then I'm going to hit close, and there it is right there. And so that makes us super happy. So there's my values and my r squared. Now you can see this guy is really low. So if you're looking at this, you've got a dot that's high on the end and two dots that are high on the end, and then it's low in the middle. This is actually better served by a curve, okay? What actually happened was some exponential growth. If you want to do exponential growth, that's fine. We didn't really talk about it in the class, but if you change it to an exponential and you go ahead and display the equation and the r squared value, what will happen is you'll get this guy right here. You can see the r squared value is better. It's a better fit. This gives you your initial value, this 7,142.8. That's your initial value of comics sales when the show started in season 1. And then this is the growth rate over here that you can see, and it's 0.0002, but it's e to that power, so you want to make a conversion and figure out what the growth factor of that was, okay? But this is really the growth factor right here of the show over time. And then of course the r squared value means pretty much the same thing in this context. I don't want to get into the finer points of the difference between this r squared value and this one, but this is the way Excel does it. Okay, now I'm going to eliminate this trend line right here. I'm going to delete that trend line and just leave my linear one so that we can talk about the linear stuff, right? So now it's time to take my chart, and I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go back to my Word document, and right here in 4, graph the data with the line of best fit, and make sure they're on the graph. So I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste let's see, there it is. That's the one that looks good, right? So you're just going to paste it in right there. Okay, and so you can see that it's now in my Word document, and I like that. All right, so now I'm ready to, oh, I gotta scoot my, okay, so now I'm ready to interpret the meaning of the slope. And so now the slope is 27.561, so 27.6. And what this means is for every increase in viewers, for every increase in viewer, there is a 27.8 increase in sales of comics. Okay, these viewers are actually in millions down here, so it actually makes sense. So it's actually for every increase in probably 1,000 viewers, we get this 27.8 increase in sales. But here, let's just keep it straight, right? So you've got 27.6. So for every increase in viewer, there's a 27.8 increase in the sales of comics. Okay. Now my y-intercept is this negative 159,941. And so now so when the number of viewers is 0, the sales of comics will be negative 159,941. Now, that doesn't actually make sense. Part of that is because we're using a linear model and an exponential fits better. What we would have seen is that before the show started, The Walking Dead was averaging about 27 to 30,000 comics. I guess when each issue came out, and so I think that's reflected in the exponential a little bit better. But if you just draw this line straight down, before the show started and the viewership was 0, there would actually be a negative amount of sales. And so this doesn't really make sense, but there it is. Okay, yours may not make sense either, and that's okay. But that is what the y-intercept means there. And now the r value is 0.922, and what that means is that, oh, I guess we started off with 92.2% of the response in sales is associated with changes in the viewers. So converting this decimal into a percent, 92.2% of the response in sales is associated with changes in the viewers. The viewers, one could argue that the change in viewers is actually causing a change in sales. But remember, unless you actually do an experiment, right, or you do a lot of analysis on this in other ways, we can only say associated. Because remember, just because two things are associated doesn't mean that one thing causes another. Alright? Now, this brings me to a point about language. I actually says when the number of viewers is zeros, the sales of comics will be this. What we're actually saying is we predict the sales of comics will be that, because we can't actually, because this isn't actually true. And so because this isn't actually true, this is just our prediction. So that actually means that for every increase in viewers, not there is, but we predict this much of an increase in comic book sales. Okay? And that's kind of an important distinction, because this equation right here is really our prediction of what will happen if the trend keeps continuing. And if you were the publisher of the Walking Dead comic book and you were looking at the season 5 numbers, you would actually know better how many Walking Dead comics to print, right, as a first run and not run out, as opposed to maybe printing too few or potentially maybe too many. Okay, so this is really kind of helpful for that. So now we're down to writing the paragraph, and so I want to go ahead and do that, but I'm going to scroll this down just a little bit so that I can do my college level paragraph. And then I'm going to type, and then I'm going to talk, right? So the paragraph explaining the association between the two is, we can see so what happened was, we can see that certainly sales is associated with an increase in viewers. You can see there's a dramatic increase from season 3 on. And one of the things that I think might be due to that is the Talking Dead show started appearing in season 3, and it's commentary, it's the comic book writers, it's the producers and actors that talk about the episode that was just on, and it appears right after The Walking Dead. And so there were a lot of viewers who didn't even know that there was a comic book that this was coming from, and so this let viewers know that. And you can see if you go here, right, it's kind of flat first 2 seasons, and then all of a sudden we've got this uptick in season 3, and then by the end of season 3 and people are talking about the show and the comic books and the difference between the two, you have this huge increase for seasons 4 and 5. And so that's just incredible, right? And so the thought then is that really the lurking variable is the Talking Dead show that let viewers know there was a comic book, and that's where a lot of the increase was, right? Now, some of the other things that might be the reason why it's not a perfect 100 is this would be where you would write about the exponential, right? So you might say something like, Okay, so if you do have sort of an exponential function, you can say it's beyond the scope of the class, but obviously this would account for some of the variability. And then maybe some other things, right? The simplified data. Okay, so that we used in the graph. If we had actually compared month to month for the show and the comic book, maybe we would account for more of the change. And then now some of this is accounted for in the fact that the viewers are going up and the sale increase in comic books is also going up, but not at the same rate, right? So you've got millions of viewers of the show, but you have hundred thousands of sales of the comic book. And so really for about every um, one viewer, oh, I guess for maybe every 100 viewers, you get about 27 comic book readers, which is pretty good, right? So some of that is all accounted for in there. But just face it, some people are going to watch the show and never going to like the comic book. Some people are going to like the show, they're going to read the comic book, and maybe they're not going to like it, so they're going to stop buying it and stuff. And so because of differences, maybe there you're going to see that, right? So but you want to think deeply about this, all right? And this is why, excuse me, this is why this should be a topic of interest to you and not just something you picked out of a hat, because you really need to know something about the variables to be able to write this paragraph in here. And I've just done something short and sweet. If you wanted to do this for credit, it would need to be a little bit more fleshed out, but this is kind of a rough draft, okay? Because remember, it needs to be thoughtful and college level, but definitely use words like associated, variability, response variable. You know, talk about those kinds of things, right? Talk about your data in those types of college level terms, all right? So there it is. There's a little example of your project and where I got the data from and what it might look like. I hope this was really helpful to you, and that makes us happy.